guys know we're here to talk about the Florida bill, which would allow students to carry guns on campuses. And for my first question, I just want everybody to go down the line and kind of explain their view on the issue. And everybody has about 1 minute. You can go over that, but try to keep it short. And we can start with you.
Okay, let's see. Based on what this says, my view is, so yeah, in the first place, I'm for it, the guns on campus, but then again, with Florida's laws, I'm not quite sure that is a good idea because it's more like they're just giving anyone the permission to use it. So I really do like Kansas's law, how it's, as long as there's adequate security, then you don't really need it, which is actually pretty good because say that means anyone here can just walk up, and there's not really adequate security here per se, but there's a little bit. So I mean, it's still kind of iffy. It's still kind of an iffy situation. So in this case, I would say no, not to have guns on campus.
Casey?
I'm with Michaela for the most part. I don't necessarily like the fact that everyone could have a weapon on campus. I like more with adequate security. So more like the way Kansas was going. I also agree with teachers being armed rather than just every student. At least teachers could, be armed to defend the schools because as of right now we're pretty much defenseless on the school campus, not allowed to have any weapons whatsoever. So as to everybody having one, I'd have to say no, but I'm for adequate security and teachers being armed.
Well, I would say just what defines adequate security, because there's security breaches everywhere. I mean, there's security breaches at the White House. So you're never really going to have a perfect campus with perfect security. There's always going to be some room that someone can get in. And so people should have the right to protect themselves. And so I think that students having concealed weapons on campus would be okay if they had the proper license and the proper background checks that went with it. And so I would support the new Florida bill that's going to allow this to happen. Eliminate future tragedies.
Bonnie?
Well, I don't think there should be guns on campus at all. Anywhere. Nowhere. I think it's just adding, what is it called? Oxygen to the fire. It's just gonna explode. I don't think it's a good idea, especially with the things that we have going on now in the world. I get security and stuff, but I just don't think it'll ever be perfect, and there's always gonna be that one person, God forbid, that'll flip. And even if they have the right background check, even if they have the right licensing, it's just, like everyone's saying, it is kind of iffy, but it's just not, I don't like it. I don't want it. I think it's fine how it is. And of course, there's always a risk, but you don't see it often. But of course, there is instances of it happening. But has it happened a lot? No. Has it happened? Yes. But
All right, thank you guys. The second question, okay, first off, does everybody know what happened at FSU a few months ago, right? You're all familiar with that?
Not really.
You're not familiar? Okay, a former student walked into the library during exam week and started shooting at faculty and students in the library. And after about a few minutes, he was shot by the campus security. So then my scenario is basically that same scenario, but for if you think that students should have guns on campus, we're going to put you in that scenario. And how would you use your weapon in that case? Would you defend yourself, defend your fellow students, or would you try to attack the attacker? And if you don't feel that students should have guns on campus, how would you defend yourself, and do you feel that there is adequate security in place where you would feel safe? So that could go to anybody to start off with. Please speak up.
Personally, I would defend my fellow classmates. I mean, obviously, you're past the point of talking to the guy if he's shooting around campus and, trying to kill people. That's his intent. There's really not, in my opinion, not much of another option. They had the security to get into the library, been better, but I think the situation might have been able to be avoided. But had a faculty or somebody or a student had a gun, maybe some of the injuries could have been prevented that were caused.
I think security all around needs to be better. Everywhere. In high schools and elementary, everywhere. All all kinds of schools. I think that eliminates the problem for almost everything is security. But like Jason said, there can be a breach, but when does it happen? It's slim to none. I mean, I understand as we get older, there's more, as technology gets newer and stuff, there's more ways to, but as long, that could have all been avoided, first of all, if there was like a metal detector or somebody. I know I go down to a university all the time, and I just, I walk in and nobody really knows that I'm just a normal person, but I'm going not as a student. Do they check me? No. I mean, it's me. I know I don't carry anything, but God forbid there's some random person just walking in. So I think if they had better security, this could all have been avoided.
Okay. Michaela or Jason?
I would have to agree with Casey. I mean, I would have to agree with Casey. Honestly, I don't know what I would do in the situation. It's like one of those things where you have to be there or to see what we would do. I would like to think that I would defend my fellow classmates. I'm not going to go around just shooting just because I have a gun, just because I have the license. But say there was crossfire between me and the other, and I was going to protect that student that he or she would have shot, maybe I would have, gotten in front and then used my weapon. But it's just one of those situations that you don't know until you're really there. So I would agree with those that would have students, if they were allowed to carry weapons on campus, to be able to defend, but then just make sure, I mean, you can never be sure with background checks and stuff, their personality, whatever they do, but just be sure it's not, like I said, that them just shooting just because they have a gun, that they, okay, well, I might as well just shoot too. So that's where I was scared about.
Well, in the situation, if I had a gun, I would absolutely defend my fellow classmates and myself because someone is threatening my life. But currently, we're not allowed to have guns. So in that situation, all you could do was hide, and people died because of that. I mean, you could blame the lack of security, but also if students had been allowed to have firearms on campus and they were registered for them, that tragedy could have been averted.
Okay, and my final question deals with the two bills that you guys have in front of you. One, the state of Florida's current bill where they strike out the section banning students and teachers and faculty, basically anybody with a concealed carry permit, from not carrying a weapon on campus. And the other bill is from the state of Kansas. It's similar, but what they do is they provide a provision saying that if there's adequate security on campus, then you're not allowed to bring in your concealed carry weapon. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Anybody can start off.
I love the Kansas. I mean, I like the Kansas bill. I think it's a reasonable provision. I mean, I think it's a reasonable thing to do. Although, what happens if they don't have adequate security? Funding is always a big issue. I mean, it's just all these other things. You could go to a poor district and they don't have the funding to get adequate security. Then you have anybody can have a gun on, or have a weapon on campus.
I like Kansas's law. The fact that if there's better security, then there probably isn't too much of a need for a gun, I don't believe. Now, if that security is breached, then there's a whole other issue at hand. So, I mean, I think that it's a good halfway point between people who would like guns and people who don't want them. It's definitely a good place in the middle to me. I agree with Casey. Like, for me, it's a good place to start as well. I do agree with their law. It's better than what we have right now until it does get changed. So, as of currently, it's more of an all or nothing. So I do really agree with Kansas' law. It's a start, so I mean, you can always be revised and changed later. But I like where they're going from there.
I would say Kansas' law is pretty much the same. Like, it's really ambiguous. Its buildings have to have adequate security measures to ensure that no weapons are permitted to be carried. What defines adequate security? So basically, all Florida's doing is making it everywhere else that we go, unless it's like a federal building, we can carry registered firearms, but on school we can't. And so all Florida's doing is saying, school, you can protect yourself just like you can protect yourself everywhere else, because you have a right to do that. The Kansas law is going to be able to be used by either side of this argument as whether like for or against, because you're never going to be able to find adequate security as there's not going to be perfect security is what I'm trying to say. So.
All right, and then my next question is for the people that want adequate security. What is adequate security for you? What would make you feel safe on campus?
For me, it would be more security guards, you know, stuff like that. People who are licensed, who know, who have the proper training, rather than you and me who just shoot in our backyards. I mean, these guys go through legit. I mean, they're officers, they're security. They go through the legit training, metal detectors. You know, we're on a small campus. It's not like we know everyone, but in a bigger university, in a bigger campus, you know, you have 30,000. I mean, you have so many kids there that you don't really know everybody, and these are public places. I mean, we have a public library for anybody who wants to come in. So I know, you know, just metal detectors and people who actually have, more people who have knowledge and proper training. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I agree with Claudia. Security guards that, you know, are armed and are able to protect us in multiple, like around like the bigger universities, you know, they have their own police departments and stuff. And then metal detectors to get into like the library or places where the shootings tend to happen. Metal detectors to go through to ensure that nobody has a gun getting in.
I agree as well. I don't know what else I would say to add to that, but I do like the metal detectors and making sure that we do have the right men that have the right training, so like police officers and so forth. But yeah, honestly, I wouldn't know what else to do besides what they said. I really like their opinions as well, so I would agree with that.
All right, and then this question is for you, Jason. Based on what everybody else has said, would that be enough for you, security-wise?
That's where I'm not totally sure about it yet. The closest thing I could think of would be each dorm tends to have a supervisor or a person, you know, on each floor monitoring things, make sure that they're armed and, you know, willing to defend and protect. It's the halfway solution, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't know where else to start. Personally, I would like to be able to defend myself, so if I did have the license, I would definitely have one on campus. But if it wasn't allowed at all, then I wouldn't know what other measures, rather than to hide whatever I can do, honestly, in that moment.
Okay. Final question. Do you think that colleges should teach students like emergency procedures when they first start, just in case there's a scenario either in your dorm room, in the library, or in a classroom where there happens to be somebody on campus with a gun? The campus could have armed security or not, but should campuses be teaching their students what to do in these situations?
Absolutely. I mean, even if it's not a shooting, there's other emergencies. There's hurricanes, there's tornadoes. It really depends on what part of the country you are. So I know here I've never heard of what we're supposed to do in an emergency and we're just fend for ourselves. So they should definitely at least have drills. I know at like dorms and stuff, sometimes they do fire drills and everything to get everyone out of the building. But definitely classes to teach what to do in an emergency.
I've only had one teacher ever mention it to me. The very first day of class, he brought it up what we would do in case, you know, a shooting or something happened. But on it, like, I think it'd be a great idea to have drills like that implemented. That way, if the situation arises, we're at least not totally unfamiliar with it. We at least have some kind of plan to fall back on versus just chaos.
Because everybody's first response is to panic, either way. So, I mean, if I saw someone pointing and shit at me, I'd probably freeze, or if I was with others in a crowd, I'd panic as well. So I think it would be a good start and a baseline to have some sort of drill. That way, it's not that it's so unfamiliar, but you'd at least kind of know in the middle of all the chaos, okay, what can I do?
I agree. I do think we should have drills, and I know when I did my freshman orientation for this campus, it was a long time ago, 3 years ago when I first started as a DE student. I remember they just went over like how the course works and, you know, simple stuff. They never went over drills and, you know, etc., like sounds that they make. When my brother is doing his orientation, here, I remember watching him and I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a sound, like a drill sound, or if we had a tornado alert, I didn't even know that was the sound for it. There's so many different alarms that I was unaware of. But thankfully, I mean, I saw my brother doing it, so now I'm familiar with it. But I know 3 years ago, I was never introduced with those kind of things, so I would have never known the type of drills, alarms. So I definitely think at orientation, or at least your first couple weeks or whatever, they should have an orientation for that kind of stuff, to mention what measures you need to take.
All right, thank you guys. Great job.
Yay!
Hey. Ooh.
America.